Communism. The commies. Here we go. First thing I want you to know is that there's not too many communist states left. You may already know this. And that, for a time period of about 70 years, there were a whole bunch of them. Right? So up until roughly 89 to 91, between 1917 and roughly 1991, there were a whole bunch of communist states. And they were, of course, rivals, direct rivals, militarily, ideologically, with Western democratic capitalist states. So this was an alternative to the world order, to the thought of classic liberalism and everything else. Communism was an alternative to all previous societies. It was truly radical. Freedom versus equality. Communists were the opposite of classic liberals. They're trying to maximize equality and not caring about individual freedom. Deliberately limiting individual freedom in order to maximize equality. Communism stems from Marx and Engels, especially Marx, who were political philosophers and economists. And back in the mid-1800s, Marx wrote Das Kapital, which is a huge, thick economic treatise on capitalism, socialism, communism, kind of a reasonably sophisticated work. And then he and Engels wrote the political pamphlet, a small, little, thin tract, the Communist Manifesto, which inspired the movements. Workers of the world unite. Communism was a bunch of things. In terms of a political economic system, what you're trying to do is create equality. And how do you do that? Well, by switching away from capitalism to these new systems. And for Marx, it was inevitable. It was definitely going to happen. And it was just a matter of time until communists came around, because capitalism for Marx can't survive indefinitely. And again, we'll do more of this on chapter 9, exactly why he thought that. But for Marx, communism, in a sense, was a prediction. When capitalism can no longer sustain itself, what are we going to get next? All right. In terms of what the political economic systems tried to do, create equality. Well, how do you do that? Confiscating wealth, eliminating private property, having the people be owners of everything. You know, it was really the state that owns everything. The people didn't. You make sure everybody has a job. Make sure everybody has a house. Everybody gets an education. Everybody has health care. That's how you create equality. So there's no private wealth. There's no ability, in theory, to acquire masses of private wealth that would create inequality. And because everyone has a job and everyone has a place to stay, etc., in theory, nobody's poor. There may be some inequality here and there, but essentially people are the same. Well, how do you get to that? Well, Marx had a dark, and as do all leftists, have a dark view of humanity in a way, in the sense that they don't trust capitalists. They don't trust people who own private property. They don't trust business owners. They've viewed power as an essential component. The only way you can get the capitalist out of power and to keep them out of power is by using force. And the only way to enforce that for long enough to make people equal and to reach true communist utopian society is to continue to eliminate those freedoms. Political freedoms, political rights, but also everything economic. Which obviously, that's one way to look at the differences between communism and classic liberalism, right? And you can also see that that's different than social democracy, too. Um, Communism went so far as to essentially eliminate democracy. Put people in charge of restricting freedom so that we can get to that place of equality. So there were no private property, no private markets, no democracy, etc. Essentially, no freedom whatsoever, which is a whole lot different than what we're used to, and it's a whole lot different than the two systems we've already described. Coming up in this next one, the fourth and final system, mercantilism, it's a little different. We're going to talk about that. Okay, see you for that one.